Two records for the month of July, and neither one came with a sales boom. In July, the average detached house cost about $454,000, and the average condo sold for about $290,000. Both are the highest average prices for July, and sales, they're down in both categories. That combination, record prices and falling sales, that's the data we're going to look through today for the month of July. Starting with the big picture across all property types in all markets in Manitoba, there was 1,475 sales in July, down about 8.7% from the 1,617 sales we saw in July of 2025, and about 1.2 below the 5-year average for the month of July. The average price for all MLS sales came in at about 408,000, up about 4.2% year over year, and 5.7% for the 5-year average for July. Now, all MLS bundles together every property type: condos, single family home, attached and detached, vacant land, mobile homes. Residential detached homes make up about 71% of the sales for this month. Condos were just under 13, and attached homes were about 5%. Before we go any deeper, I'm Justin Zinkowski with Royal LePage Prime Real Estate. I work with buyers and sellers across Winnipeg and the Interlake regions. If you want to talk about what's happening in your specific neighborhood, there are links in the description below. You can book a call directly, you can sign up for some MLS alerts, or you can grab one of the guides I've put together about selling or buying, pricing a home, all below in the description. And if you want market updates every month, hit subscribe. I put these videos out for both Winnipeg and the Interlake regions. Getting into single family detached homes, the biggest category, and it's usually the best read on where the market's really heading. Province-wide across Manitoba, there was 1,054 sales in July, down about 6.5% from last year when we saw 1,128, and less than 1% below the 5-year average. So essentially right on the same pace. The average detached price in July was just over 454,000. That's up about 2.5% from a year ago, and about 6.3% above the 5-year average. Active inventory sitting at 1,898 homes, up 12% year over year, but that is still 4% below the 5-year average. So more choice than last July, but not oversupplied market by historical standards. New listings are down about 3.6%. It looks like the market's finding its own footing, then tipping hard one way. Prices are still climbing. The pace of new supply and the pace of sales are both a step slower than last year. Year to date, detached sales are down about 7% from the same period last year. So with fewer transactions overall this year, the ones happening are at a meaningful higher price. Looking at how homes are actually selling relative to their asking price, in July, almost 38% of detached homes sold above their list price. And that's down significantly from April's 52% and even May with 48%. Then back in July, about 8.5% sold exactly at list, then almost 54% sold under list price. So it seems like the days of every home going over asking are cooling off a bit, and that'll be situational, definitely on the price range and the neighborhood. And just looking back to June of 2026, almost 45% of homes sold over list price. So that's a drop of about 7% in one single month. Looking at the city of Winnipeg specifically, separate from the province-wide numbers, the story shifts a bit. Active listings in the city are at 855, up about 11% from last year, and still down about 7% from the 5-year average. Sales for July came in at 665, also down 7.6%, with the average price about 460,000, essentially flat from a year ago, but still 4.5% higher than the 5-year average. And before we move on from detached pricing, here's a quick note. The 400 to 500,000 price range was the most active price band in July with 257 sales, and about 54% of all detached sales came in under $500,000 or less. The top neighborhoods for detached sales in July were Waverly West, followed by West Kildonan. The city itself is behaving a little differently than the province as a whole. Province-wide prices are still climbing at a healthy clip, but inside Winnipeg specifically, prices have barely moved. That's worth knowing if you're comparing your own neighborhood to the province-wide headline. This map shows how those year-to-date average prices break out zone by zone across Winnipeg. Useful if you want to compare your specific area against the city-wide numbers we just walked through. And on the high end, there were 21 detached homes sold at $1 million or more, with one top sale just over $2 million. And that's actually one more luxury sale than July of 2025. Condos told a different story this month. 187 sales across Manitoba, down about 21% from July of 2025. And that's down almost 12% below the 5-year average. That's the softest category this month by a wide margin. Despite the drop in sales, the average condo price actually climbed to $290,000, up about 2% year over year, and active listings were nearly flat, up just 1.2% at 474. It seems like fewer condo buyers were active in July, but the ones who did weren't finding much room to negotiate on price. And that's not the pattern you'd expect from a slower month, and that's something to watch going into August stats. With residential attached homes, so townhomes, semi-detached properties, they moved in the opposite direction on supply. Active listings jumped almost 20% year over year to 303, and now we're running about 12% higher on the 5-year average. Sales were down almost 9% from last July, but the average price rose almost 7% to $399,000, and that's about 12% higher than the 5-year average. And that's the largest year-over-year price increase in any category we've covered this week so far today. It seems like buyers are showing up for attached homes and paying for the right ones. Even with more inventory to choose from, that category is worth watching if you're on the fence. With communities just outside of Winnipeg, Oakbank, RM Springfield, East St. Paul, St. Andrews, Headingley, and Oak Bluff combined, the average sales price over the last 12 months sits at about $585,000, up from $560,000 a year ago. That's about a 4.5% increase. Sales activities in these communities is also up 137 compared to 124 a year ago. Buyers who want the more space and a bit more distance from the city are still showing up in numbers and paying more to get it. Here's what I'd pull out of July, depending on where you sit. If you're selling, Manitoba detached and condo prices just set a new record for July. If you're pricing at where the market's actually paying, you're still in a strong position, but listings are up about 12% province-wide, and attached homes posted the biggest price jump of any category. If you've been putting off listing because you're worried that the market's cooled off too much to get a good price, that's not really what July's numbers show. What's changed is the buyers have more to compare against, not that they're paying less. And if you're buying, you have more to choose from than you did a year ago. Active listings climbed across every category. Attached homes are up almost 20%. Sales activity cooled almost everywhere, which means a little more room for negotiation. Condos in particular saw the sharpest pullback in sales, which is worth a look at affordability. If you've been waiting for the market to hand you a clear buying signal, more inventory, softer sales, less competition on offers, July might be that signal for a few categories. In the big picture, this is the market finding a bit more balance. Prices up, sales are down, and inventory is rising. And that's the classic sign of a shift. Not a crash, not a boom. One more thing worth knowing, Winnipeg's own detached numbers move differently than Manitoba as a whole. City prices were essentially flat, while the province climbed about 2.4%. That's July 2026 for Winnipeg and Manitoba. 2 new price records, softer sales almost everywhere, and a market that's giving both sides a little more room to work with than a few months ago. If today's breakdown was useful, subscribe. Next month I'll do this again. What would be the most helpful for you right now? Walking through what these numbers mean for your specific street, or getting a full monthly breakdown sent to your way automatically? Either way, the links are below. I'm Justin Zinkowski with Royal LePage Prime Real Estate. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next month.